Greetings, friends. Welcome to Soul Empowerment. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and I'm delighted to be here with my three co-hosts. Before I get them to introduce themselves, I'm gonna give us a little bit of material to get us started. Now, the question I want to ask you is this: have you ever found yourself haunted by the past, or trapped in a cycle of replaying old mistakes and disappointments? You know, every once in a while, I think we all get stuck looking in the rearview mirror at painful breakups, failed ventures, or words we wish we could take back. And inadvertently, we allow these memories to fester into sources of ongoing regret and self-criticism. This kind of negative focus on what was can paralyze us and get us trapped. It's almost like having an anchor holding you to the past, right? So it impedes forward momentum, and it casts a shadow over our present day lives. And we can even fall into a belief that we are powerless and disconnected from our path forward. Well, for this episode number 69, this is called Harnessing Intentional Insight. And our desire today is to help anyone who has ever felt the weight of yesterday holding them back from embracing today to maybe open up to some new possibilities. So as I said, my name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and I'm going to invite all of my guest hosts to participate in a little exercise that I like to call, who are you, where are you, what do you do, and why? And today I'm going to start with you, Gail.
All right. Hello, I'm Gail Nowak. I'm located in the greater Boston area, and I work with spirit-led coaches and leaders in the wellness industry or the wellness space who want to market themselves more authentically and create healthy business relationships. And I use a blend of energy work and emotional healing and visibility strategy to help you create a pathway back to your authentic voice so you can communicate boldly, lead lovingly, and make the world a better place. Because why not have a better world, right? So if you want to learn more about me, what's that?
Who doesn't want a better place?
Right, exactly. So if you want to talk more with me after the show, you can find me at gailnowak.com. And David, do you want me to pass the baton to the next co-host?
Sure, go ahead.
We've never done that before. All right, Sarah, you're up.
Okay. Hello, I'm Sarah Jane. I'm in the UK, in a not so little town called Bournemouth, but it's definitely a town, not a city. And it's on the south coast of the UK. I'm a complementary health therapist, I think is what they call us over here, or an alternative health therapist. But I work mainly with energy, Reiki, and mostly sound in the form of what I call vocal Reiki, because it's the use of the voice, it's toning. And I was just saying before we started, I spent Sunday at a Mind, Body, Spirit fair. I had a stand where I was giving tasters to people of the vocal Reiki, the most powerful aspect of which is toning some people's name. And the people that chose to experience that, the first lady, it made a massive difference to her. She came in with a stick, walking strangely, whatever. She was glowing the whole day as she walked around the fair. It was lovely to see just how powerful this energy is. And with that energy, I help people to connect with and heal their inner child. But that was just tasters at the fair.
That's beautiful.
Scott,
and if you think if there's anybody else left here, you might pass the baton.
Yeah, I was going to say Scott. I was waiting for David to talk.
Sorry. I'm standing here waiting for the baton. I couldn't take it.
Hand it over to you.
Hi everyone. I'm Scott Holmes. I'm from the south coast of Boston, and so I do Reiki, polarity, theta healing, etc., etc., etc. But what it is I am an intuitive energy healer, and the moniker of healer is a little bit of a misnomer because I don't do the healing. You do the healing with the energy that we provide when we create a safe space for those people looking for that calm. And when we talk through these programs, we all hope that the calm, the peace, all of that you are looking for can be found here in the tools that are talked about or provided here. And I would suggest getting in touch with one of these beautiful practitioners if you indeed are looking for an answer. Thank you, David.
Right. And so who isn't looking for answers? Who isn't looking for a better place to live, a better place to be, have a better life? I don't really know too many people who fall into the outer side of that question. I think almost everybody is looking for some kind of improvement in their life. So as Scott said, you can contact anybody, any one of us here, and I'm sure you'll get some great results no matter who you choose. So I encourage you to reach out and because let's face it, one of the things that I had to learn kind of the hard way after having gone through much of my life as someone who has to do it himself. One of the biggest challenges that I ever had was just reaching out and asking someone for help. And what I discovered, I had this story in my head that, man, if I ask someone for help, I'm just going to be sharing how weak I am and I'm going to be putting a burden on people. Those were the kinds of stories that I had in my head. But what I found interesting about that was it was almost like the exact opposite happened. People want to be needed. They want to be helpful. And they don't always know necessarily how to help you, but they want to support you. And you might be surprised to hear that, but it is really true. And furthermore, most people, when I ask them for help, they say, it's no burden at all, man. I'm delighted you asked. Thank you. It makes me feel important knowing that you care about how I might help you. So take that perspective and maybe use it to reach out to someone who you really think might be helpful to you. And that's what this whole program is about, shifting perspectives, right? And that's why we chose this title today, Harnessing Intentional Hindsight. Because as I said at the beginning, we all kind of look back to the past and sometimes we get stuck in it. But we're going to start talking a little bit now about how you can use the information from the past to help you move forward rather than being stuck there. So today I want to start with you, Sarah. I'd like to hear your perspective on this whole idea of hindsight and intentional hindsight and stuff like that. Give us your take on this.
I'm going to start by adding to what you've just said, because I used to do an awful lot of oracle cards, and on one occasion I received one that said, let yourself receive. And within the bit that it wrote with it was, you get pleasure from supporting others. Give others the pleasure of supporting you. Let yourself receive. And I think that is so important. And it's something that I have very much learned, because I was just like that. I wouldn't ask people because I didn't think anybody would do anything for me. Hindsight. I suppose I can look back at my story and I know it. I've known my story for as long as I can remember. I've always known it. And now I find that if I find myself looking back, it's, okay, what happened that caused this in my life today? So I don't look back at it as a judgment. I look at it and say, okay, what happened? Why have I been doing things and been the way I've been? And how can I grow from that? How can I move on from that? How can I deal with that? And for some people, it will be a matter of dealing with it, getting over it, getting through it, getting around it, getting under it. But I think we have to go through these things and accept them, acknowledge them. This happened. Every now and again, I will have something crop up and it becomes an awareness, a situation that occurred. Let's try and do one very, very quickly. I was going to be having a conversation. We've lost David. I was going to be having a conversation with somebody on one of my programs. And I'm trying to think what the conversation was about, and I can't, but I was out for a walk, and I remember thinking about when my jaw got broken and how my husband had been, because I didn't know it's broken for a week. I was out for that walk, and I remembered exactly what happened in respect of after I'd been to the hospital, had the 2-hour operation a night in hospital to put the jaw back in place, broken by the dentist, not my husband. And I realized that he'd been acting exactly the way his father had treated his mother. His father rarely spoke to his mother. She, bless her, a very simple soul, and he was sadly far too intellectual, let's put it that way, as we couldn't have a conversation with her. Once I married my husband, because we'd been together in total 11 years, but only 3.5 years married, I realized, but I was out for that walk, that's how he started to treat me, the way his father treated his mother. So sometimes you can look back at things and be open to seeing with wider eyes, with better perception and understanding. I felt like a slave in my own home. And it was literally, came out of hospital, he made some of my homemade soup. So he warmed up some homemade soup for me. The following day, he expected me to just be back to normal. That was it. Back to doing absolutely everything. And it was just like, but it's being able to look back and see where things come from and understand now what you might not have understood then.
Yeah, beautiful. Sorry, I dropped off there, guys. I don't know what happened. I had a loss. I hope I wasn't gone too long. But anyway, I didn't catch everything that you said, Sarah, but I did catch most of it. And I think I've heard this story before anyway. Basically, what I'm hearing is we can learn a lot just by looking at the events non-judgmentally of something that may have happened in the past and begin to understand the relationship of different people, events, circumstances, and so forth, and how they all kind of came together to create that situation in our lives. And it's not necessarily about, being self-piteous or judging ourselves or having criticism. It's just raising awareness. Because if you understand that, part of what I believe is my wounds come from some of those things that happened in the past. And unfortunately, I learned coping strategies that helped me to protect myself from the pain of those wounds. But those coping strategies kind of carried forward into my life and became unconscious. And so nowadays, I may be doing something that I did back then and not even knowing I'm doing it and having a negative impact on other people as a result. This is the formation of shadow, the parts of ourselves that we hide, repress, and deny. And so it's really important, I think, to be willing to do that deep dive and look within and say, okay, how did you can use the word invite, or how did I bring this situation into my life and for what purpose? And if you ask the question that way, you can ask it and you don't necessarily have a judgment, like a negative perspective on why it might have happened. And you can say, oh, now I see. It was to help me learn this particular thing about my life that I might not have been able to learn through any other thing. So that, I think, is really, really important. Gail, what's your perspective on this?
I love Sarah's example of this. And I've had that moment where you move beyond the pain or the judgment or the anger or the sadness around a specific circumstance or event. And whether it's, a week later or years later, having that epiphany, right? Like having that moment of like, oh, I get it. I see it now. I feel like that's such a great example of what we mean when we talk about intentional hindsight, because I certainly was someone who would be in hindsight, but stuck in hindsight. I was reading the description for the show again before hopping on, and it brought me back to a moment, and I was like, ooh, actually, I kind of had that moment right before the show of like, oh, I think reading that triggered a memory for me that helped me understand where my rumination pattern may have come from. And it was an experience. I was probably about 6 years old, and my parents were having a custody battle over visitation rights. And my mom and my stepdad were meeting with a judge, and my dad and his lawyer and I went into this other room, and the lawyer was asking these questions, but he wasn't being direct about it. He was asking like, "Oh, have you ever been on a plane? Would you like to go on a plane? You know, when kids when they fly, they get to go into the cockpit and see things." And of course, this was that gives an indication of my age, right? Because this is all pre 9/11. And I'm 6 years old, and it sounds fun and adventurous. And, he's not asking, do you want to visit with your dad?
Right.
And the whole point of us being there was because I had visited with my dad, but I was pretty young and I was homesick, and nothing bad happened, but there were some ways that he handled it. And I think he was doing the best that he could, but I didn't like it. And I told my mother, and who knows what was going on between them and their dynamic. But I said, I don't want to see him. And she was actually listening to me and honoring that. And then it, kind of progressed into this whole big custody battle. And we went back into the judge's chambers, and my father's attorney says to the judge, she wants to visit with her father. And that was like, talk about deer in the headlights. Like, that moment literally felt like the rug being ripped out from underneath me.
Right.
And I just froze, because that man put me in the impossible position. Like, I've been telling my mother, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. But I also didn't want to hurt my father and protest in that moment. And I remember reliving that moment for weeks afterwards. And there was no discussion, my mom didn't talk to me about it. I sort of felt like she was mad, angry, hurt, whatever. And I just took that all to be directed at me. I don't know if it was, it probably wasn't. And I just kept like, how could, trying to change the outcome in my mind for as long as I can remember. Right. And when I was reading the description for today, I was like, gosh, I think that really put me into that habit, that pattern. I could think of so many times where I would take situations or conversations or, unpleasant things that happened, and just, instead of taking the lesson from it, I mean, I was 6 at that time, but even well into adulthood, I would just replay the thing over and over and over and wish that it had gone differently, or this is what I would have said differently, or this is how I would have handled it differently. And gotten stuck there. And so that kind of hindsight can really hijack us. Right. And honestly, like, I was trying to remember, like, how did I move from that to a healthier sort of approach to looking at things and seeing the value of the experience, or the lesson in the experience, or how I grew from that experience. I'm not entirely sure I can pinpoint a specific thing, but I also know that I've had experiences where things didn't work out the way I thought I wanted them to work out. And then with time, I saw very clearly, wow, I dodged a bullet.
Right.
Like, it was a blessing that it did not work out the way I wanted it to work out.
Right.
And so, having such contrasting experiences with this experience of hindsight, maybe that's all I needed to really understand that we have a choice in how we want to reflect on our past, how we want to engage with our present, and what our intention is for the future. And hindsight is a piece of that, but it doesn't have to be the only piece.
Right. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Gail. That was very touching. And first of all, I want to say divorce is a horrible thing. It's I don't wish it on anybody, honestly. And no matter how well-meaning the parents might be, the kids are always stuck in the middle. And yeah, I've been through a couple of divorces. I don't really ever want to do it again. That's why I'm not ever going to get married again. I've just decided that way I don't ever have to have that experience. But another thing that you said, and I just wanted to highlight this, you talked about at the beginning of your share, you talked about, oh, now I get it. That moment when all of a sudden, you got it. And you may have revisited that thing tens, 20s, hundreds of times, perhaps over the course of your lifetime. And now finally it makes sense. So this is something I want people to understand. It's kind of like being a detective at a crime scene, you know? All the clues are right there, but you may not see what needs to be seen within the body of the clues that are right there. You may miss something. And so sometimes you have to go back and look again, you know? And I think we actually did an episode about detective. I can't remember the title of it, but I remember doing it. And that's exactly kind of what it is, right? So yeah, blessings to you for learning that and for sharing that. Scott, I'd like to hear your perspective.
Wow. Thank you for your stories, by the way. So I was looking at hindsight, and in my middle years, 30s, 40s, 50s, and things would come up, and I, as you said, you ruminate on them. They'd come play them over and over. But what I did notice later in life is that I took those times in my life and I still felt about them the way I did at that moment. I had shame, I had regret, I had anger, I had all of those. And I looked at those the same way. And every time they came up and I replayed it, those same emotions would come up within me. I would replay it and I would be in the scene. It's like a movie, right? You're watching the movie and every time I act the same way and I have that same feeling and it comes up. And when we talked about hindsight, it really struck me because I did about 5 years of intensive therapy after my wife passed because I was stuck in those. I was in survival for so many years and I could not get out of those replays. Every time I went back into the scene, the same thing happened. The same emotions came up. They weren't good. I had regret. I just wish I had done something different and I couldn't at the time and I didn't. And as I look back, we did EMDR. For those unfamiliar with it, certain psychologists use it, and they bring you back into the situation, but you're viewing it like a fly on the wall from the present perspective. In other words, I was a 60-year-old man viewing my 8-year-old self in this situation. And then when you see the entire, that change in perspective for me allowed me to see you were 8. It's okay that you felt that way. It's all right that happened. It doesn't define you anymore. You're a 60-year-old man. You don't need to feel that way. And it took away the power of those events in my life where all the shame of I could have done better, I should have done better. I got so angry that I said words that just were so hurtful. And there was a forgiveness in that. There was forgiveness that I did the best I could with what I had at the time, with what I had to be able to work with as far as tools, whether it be emotionally or physically or fiscally. That's what I could do. And I look back and now I can see those memories without the overwhelm that those emotions brought before, without that sadness coming over me and dictating it. And that's where somebody pushing your buttons, right? They push a certain button, they hit a certain thing, and you start reacting like a 13-year-old kid. And you yell, you kick, you scream, And you wonder where that came from, because it came right up. And that was some of those times when you haven't really resolved them. And for me, I really, when those things come up, when I acknowledge them, when I understand who they are, and I tell them thank you, because they're there to help you. They're there to keep you safe. Those are mechanisms you learned as a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 17-year-old, that kept you safe at that time. And you don't need it anymore, because you are an adult. You are however old you are, and you can see it from a different perspective. And that is a gift. So when you see your past from who you are now, rather than who you were when it happened, it really changes that perspective. And it has been, for me, it was a lifeline. All the regret went away. All the what ifs went away. And I was able to concentrate on being present with where I was and acknowledge with gratitude all those things that happened to allow me to be who I am now.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Scott. Thank you for that. You brought up a couple of points that really resonate for me. This idea, first of all, regret. Well, what is a regret but some belief that you did something wrong back then and you wish you could change it, right? So there's some emotion tied up in there, but it's mostly just a lot of judgment. That's what it is. It's self-judgment, specifically directed at me. Shame is exactly the same way. The difference about shame, though, is it's not about doing wrong. It's about being wrong. It's about being broken, about not being good enough, that sort of thing. And shame and guilt and regret, those kinds of things, I call them feelings, but they're not emotions per se, even though they have emotional energy associated with them. They're 99% judgment, self-inflicted judgment. And it's until you realize that, you're probably never going to get out of it. Okay. Once you realize, oh my God, I am judging myself. And the moment you can say, I'm judging myself, is probably the moment that you can begin to start having some compassion for yourself. Right? If you were talking to your own child who was judging himself or herself in some way, you'd probably want to say, do you notice what you're doing? You're making yourself wrong because of this and that and the other thing. How is that working for you? I bet you it doesn't make you feel very good, right? And so maybe you can as an adult, you want to teach the child how to have some self-compassion and some self-forgiveness, 2 words that you brought up, Scott. And that's really what I think intentional hindsight is about, right? It's about honoring what happened, saying, yep, this happened, and removing all the judgment from it so you can just see it for what it is. Try not to interpret it. Try not to have a conclusion about it. Try not to assess it or put value judgments of any kind on it. Just simply say, this is what happened. Now, how did I bring this into my life? And what am I here to learn about it? How can I take my learning and move forward in the next phase? Right? That to me is what this is all about. And so, Scott, when you're thinking about it that way, how do you take what you've learned from the past and start bringing it forward and amplifying your life right now?
Well, the key to that for me has always been gratitude and compassion for myself. When I was going through therapy, I had this judge sitting on he was in robes. He was sitting there, and he would judge that it was a big part of me. And I realized that that's self-judgment. And he had the gavel, and he'd say, "Oh, you're wrong this time. Yep, you didn't do this right." And what happened was he took over, and I did that same thing to other people. My daughters came to me and said, "You always had higher expectations of us than anyone else." And I'm like, and I, of course, refuted that and said, "Of course not." Yes, I did. Because I had such high levels of expectation for myself, I had them for them also. And it flavored everything in every relationship that I had. And once I understood the judge, and the judge got smaller and smaller and quieter and quieter, it allowed me to see people as they were rather than what I expected them or how I expected them to act. And it's wasn't about boundaries. It was about expectations for me. I had those expectations of what should, would, could be. And now that I don't have them, life is so much easier. There is
Right.
forgiveness. There is forgiveness for because you're human, because life goes on. Things don't go exactly the way you plan, and stuff happens. The computer goes down. There's a lightning strike. The power goes out. You're late because your car broke down. All these human things, and you allow for that because you would want that for yourself, right? You want
Right.
that same kind of compassion put out there for you. So it really allows me to be present rather than having this kind of curtain of expectations is pulled away, and just accepting what is and allowing it. One of the hardest things I found in dealing with clients and dealing with myself is allowing things to happen rather than expecting them to happen in a certain particular way. And
great.
Gail, you had said it, that sometimes if we're given what we really want, we really work for, and we don't get it, if it happened, it might have been one of the biggest mistakes. So when we allow things to happen as they should and accept that, it's amazing, amazing, amazing what happens in your life.
Right. Beautiful. Sarah, so what's your process for when you become aware of something from your past and you realize that there's a lesson there? How do you bring that forward into your life?
Oh, I think I just accept it. So I want to tap into a word that both Gail and Scott used, which was rumination, because ruminants, they are animals that chew the cud. And so what are we doing when we're constantly going into something and just letting it, we're just chewing on it, we're chewing on it, we're chewing on it. So is it not time to swallow it? Because it's already affecting us internally anyway. And then we can slowly digest it, and then we can let it go. So thinking about, because that's exactly what we do when we eat. That's what cattle do, the ruminants do. So it's a word that's cropped up quite a lot recently, and then you two have used it. I look at something I think about my childhood and what happened to me as a baby. It was an accident. And it was circumstances outside of my parents' control that meant they couldn't come and see me in hospital for any more than one time a week for a couple of hours or an hour or whatever it was. And as with the previous example, it's being able to look back at something and realize that, especially if there are other people involved or sort of organizations, that there are many things that are outside of our control. Can we then realize that what we judged, what we thought about a situation wasn't actually how it was? So it's opening up to the situation in the way it was. But there is one thing I'm still trying to work round. And my mother, when I was talking to her, she said, I used to come into the hospital when they were allowed to come in. She said, I'd pick you up. Bearing in mind, folks, I was only a year old. I'd pick you up, I'd cuddle you, and I'd tell you how much I loved you. And then she'd leave again. So I have this huge problem with the word love, because to me, it just means desertion, abandonment, rejection. But I care. So if there's something like that you've got a problem with, that you're struggling with, find an alternative word or feeling. And for me, that is care. I care so much about people, which is why I love doing things like this program and sharing with so many of you and doing my own programs, doing what I do with the vocal Reiki. It's why I love doing all of that, because I care about people. So if you can't get over what a word means to you, your perception of that word, find an alternative that supports you and probably means exactly the same as that word you struggle with, but it's one that supports you to be able to feel much more comfortable. So there's a thought for you.
Beautiful, Sarah. And I love you and I'm not going anywhere. Just wanted to get that out there. Yeah, I loved your metaphor of the ruminants, the chewing, the swallowing, the digesting, and the releasing. I mean, and that's precisely what we need to do. How often do we take some kind of energy, a negative energy, and we choose not to do anything with it? We choose to ignore it. We choose to pretend it doesn't exist. And so part of the way we do that is kind of hide it away in some pocket of our body somewhere. Well, you know what? That energy is going to show up sooner or later. It's going to come out one way or another. And usually, if you have been hiding it long enough, it shows up in a very inconvenient and unpleasant way. So it's best, I think, to go and just deal with things as they happen to the best of your ability. And as Sarah says, chew on it for as long as you need, swallow it, let the body do its thing with the digestion, and pull whatever it can out of there that supports the body, and release all the rest. That's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor, and I think something that we should all kind of remember, even though the idea of digestion may be kind of unpleasant for some people. So there's lots of hidden blessings in looking to things that have happened in the past, and we will never see them if we don't look at them with non-judgmental perspective. So, Gail, how about you? When you have this, oh, that's what it was about, how do you bring that forward into your life?
So this feels a little vulnerable because I had a conversation just yesterday. And I heard myself saying, well, they hate me anyway. So there's all kinds of judgment laced in that, right? And of course, the person I was talking to was taken aback and like, that's not true. And they don't feel that way. And that seems kind of harsh. And so there's judgment all around, right, in this conversation. Right. And it was wrapped up in logistics and making some decisions around things. And so at the moment, it was sort of like, let's just figure out what we're doing. But I've since kind of had some opportunity to kind of step back and get curious about that. And of course, I was going to use the word curious because I seem to say it in every episode, right?
That's right.
But I was curious about that because I was like, well, what's true? What's true? What actually feels true here? And the statement of, well, they hate me anyway, was protection, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not protection with no evidence to back it up necessarily. Might have been an overstatement. But what was really true in that moment for me was that, you know what, they're going to talk. So just let them talk. Like, let's not make the decision based on what people might say or might think, because they're going to do it anyway. Right. And so it was an interesting experience to kind of use some intentional hindsight to get to the truth of a very defensive and judgmental statement that came out of my mouth that didn't come from nowhere. But, like sometimes even just recognizing like, ooh, that's charged. Like there's some charge in that statement. And there's some charge in the person who's like maybe being a mirror, right? Like the person that I was talking to, there was some emotion and maybe some defensiveness on their part, but I also think that they were coming from a place of like, are you sure about that, Gail? Like they were coming from a place of love too at the same time.
Right.
And so I think in moments like that, if we start to just notice, how did I feel when I said that? Does that actually feel true? Getting curious about it, asking yourself these questions to reflect, like, well, some of this feels true, but I guess it doesn't really feel like they actually hate me. You know what I'm using a specific example here, but for me, it's more about just allowing however it comes out, right? Because I also have noticed that I went through a period where I was trying to avoid sort of doing it wrong, right? Like, oh, I'm supposed to be compassionate and I'm supposed to be loving. And so that has to look a certain way. Well, not necessarily. You can be compassionate and loving to yourself. And the words so-and-so hates me can still come out of your mouth because you're feeling something, right? And so it's less about sort of showing up and doing it perfectly, but really paying attention to something that is triggering you or activating you, or maybe you hear yourself saying something and you're like, oh, it's not quite right. And just getting like, have the judgment, but don't hang on to the judgment. And when the judgment passes, then get curious about it. Like, what was that really all about for me? What actually feels true about this? What maybe might have been me sort of on the defensive or being protective, and why? And maybe you have a good reason for that, but maybe it's not exactly true the way that you thought it was true in the moment. So that's just coming up in the moment here. So I don't know, it's like really fresh, but I felt like that was a good example to share.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's awesome that you shared that. First of all, one thing that I'll say is if you think about how you interpret a situation or how you conclude things or how you judge things, how often are those conclusions, judgments, or assessments wrong? The fact of the matter is you don't have all the information. You're only basing your statements on the information that you can see right here and right now. So it may feel true, but as you say, when you look a little deeper and you find that curiosity, and I love that word curiosity because it implies in its nature no judgment. I'm open to all possibilities when I'm curious. So if you can have that kind of energy as you approach something, then you can begin to see what's really true. The other thing I want to say is I've said this before on this program and other programs, but I haven't said it for a while, so I want to say it today. I believe that everything that we think, say, do, or feel is motivated at its deepest level by a desire to give or receive love. I believe that. For me, it is absolutely true. Now, of course, what I may think of as love may not look like love to you. Okay, that's the other challenge. This is why we have so many weird things happening in the world right now. Ultimately, everybody just wants to give or receive love. That's part of our nature because we are, really deep down, that's what we are. So we want to express that true nature. So I know it's a hard statement to grok, but I really believe it's 100% true. And if you just kind of meditate on it, I think you'll begin to understand what I'm talking about. So sometimes people will love in dysfunctional ways. I think we see plenty of evidence of that. And when they want to give love, they might do things that look like the exact opposite of love because that's what they have learned in their life. So sometimes we have to rise above and have a little more compassion for some of those people who are acting out or doing things that we don't like. And that's hard, especially when you're caught up in the, I hate that kind of behavior. When that attitude is coming up, it's really hard to be compassionate or empathetic or gentle or loving from that place. So, Scott, I notice you've been, I'm judging based on appearances that you have something you want to say.
It is, well, 5 different things came up. So curiosity, I absolutely adore. I agree with you, David. Love is first, last, and always the primary. All of us, we come into this world, and Sarah said it herself, is that as a young child, all she was looking for was love, and mom said, "Hey, I love you, see ya." And so she defined love as leaving. So she can't use love in the same respect. And that really brings to mind that we all have a definition of the word. Sometimes I always find that words are very, very limiting when it comes to emotions and feelings. And that curiosity, while love may be number one, number two is curiosity. It's how we get through life. When we were younger, that's how we realize, oh, my hands, and this is what I can do with it. Oh, I can walk. All of those things that we can do because we're curious, because we want to see what's next. What's next? It seems that at some point in our life, we stop that. We stop the curiosity. And we just kind of go back to, yep, this is my life. This is what happened. Yep, this is it. And there's no, the curiosity isn't there anymore. What brings all of this up is being curious about what is. How does it look? All of those dark things, the things that happened when we were younger, those things that traumatize us, when we, as David says, put them in a back pocket somewhere, they come out, and there is an entire industry devoted to shadow work. All those pockets that we filled and weigh us down, it's shadow work, because when it comes out, it's dark and it's not really pleasant, because we're looking at it and we haven't dealt with it for so long, and we knew what happened when we were 8 years old, and we don't want to revisit that anymore. And so curiosity and love are what I use in dealing with all of those. Love for the person that I was involved with, sending them love and gratitude. It taught me a lesson, whether it was good or bad or indifferent. It still was a lesson that I had to learn, that I had to understand. And I really enjoy finding out how people define the words we use all the time. Now, the word love has been used in about 5 different contexts between all of us and said in different contexts. I love what you said there. Oh, I really love that statement. Oh, I love that you told that story. So how do we define it? And what's the version of love that we're using? Because love, you can love your cat, you can love your husband, you can love your children, you can love the color pink.
I love ice cream.
Okay. That is number 3 on my list. So, but how we use it, how we interpret it, how it is felt, and I really enjoy being able to kind of wash all of this stuff, right, and just kind of feel it out and see what comes out after you get it all the clean and all the darkness comes off it, and you kind of pick it up and you go, oh, that wasn't so bad. And you hang it up and you dry it, and you can still see it, and it still happened, but it's really not so dark, and you can see it well. So I appreciate the fact that openness, that vulnerability, that understanding comes out in curiosity and love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Curiosity, as I said, is one of those qualities that I think we all have. I agree with you that we tend not to use it as much as we get older, perhaps because we're set in our ways or whatever. But when we allow ourselves to get back into that place of curiosity, what we notice, or what I notice anyway, is that complete absence of judgment. Oh, look at that. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? There's those words, curiosity and interesting, seem to go together, right? So there's many, as I've said earlier, there's many blessings that we can uncover when we look to the past and begin to see all of our previous experiences in a whole new light, especially if you're coming at it from a place of curiosity. The other thing is we want to do this from a place of compassion, right? If we go back and just continue judging ourselves, then obviously that's just a waste of time and energy. We're not gaining anything by doing that. If instead we can go back and look and say, oh, I see, look at how I behaved there. That's interesting. I wonder what I can learn from that. Do I still behave that way? And if I do, what am I doing? As Gail mentioned, am I protecting myself? Am I defending myself? Am I just trying to express myself? What am I doing when I behave that way? This is really powerful stuff. And so it's a way of reviewing your past without getting stuck in it, but using compassion as a lever to help you see things with an open heart and an open mind from a place of love, I guess, right? And forgiveness. So, Sarah, tell us a way that tell me how I can learn to forgive myself.
Love yourself. Learn to love yourself. Love, and I know how I feel about that word. So care about you. It is so important to have that care of yourself. Also to find out about yourself. You know, there's talk, isn't there, about unlearning everything you've ever been told about yourself so that you can find the you that's underneath that. And it is about unlearning. It is, for me, it's about the learned behaviors, becoming aware of them. Yes, if you feel you have to go and find out where those behaviors came from, that's the hindsight. Go and find it out. Have the curiosity to find out. But if it's a behavior that's not serving you any purpose, we have this thing, it's just like, oh no, why does this keep happening to me? It keeps happening because we keep responding in exactly the same way every time it happens. And until we learn that lesson of stop, right, how did I behave last time? How did I react last time? Let's try something different. And there was a technique I've learned, there is a technique I've learned, and it's called metamorphic technique. And it helps you to get rid of old and unwanted behaviors that don't serve you any purpose anymore. And I actually feel, along with Reiki, that has been amazing in supporting me in my life. Gentle touch of feet, hands, and head. That's all it is. And yet, as a practitioner, I had to not only give 50 sessions, but receive 20. And I slowly became aware in my life that my behaviors were changing without me even being aware of it. So you can do it through awareness, but there are people and techniques out there. Some things we have to become aware of to adjust in our lives. Other things, they've served their purpose. It's time for them to be let go.
Beautiful. Thank you. So that metamorphic technique, the way you described it, light touch on head, hands, and feet. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a
feet,
sorry,
feet hands, it comes from reflexology. It was discovered through reflexology.
I see.
But yes, feet, hands, and head. And it literally is along the spine area of the foot and the hand, and then just around the head. It is the gentlest of touch. And it's definitely been part of my journey to me.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you. Gail, teach us how to forgive ourselves.
How to forgive. Okay. Well, one of the ways I've found to be really effective for myself and for my clients is first to validate, to validate, of course you felt that way in that experience. Of course you thought that. Of course you responded in that way, right? And just accepting how you showed up in any given moment, which removes the judgment, right? And moves us out of the whole rumination. Oh, I should have done it differently, or I didn't do it right, or all of that. It's like, actually, that strategy was really serving you in that moment, right? And I think with that validation, that self-validation, we can sort of accept, okay, this happened, and kind of let go of trying to change it. And we can change how we respond to it. We don't change the events that happened, right? And then I think ultimately it's deciding or recognizing, number one, change is possible, right? So we can sit there and hate on ourselves and just sort of stew in self-loathing, or with validating how we showed up in that moment and accepting that it happened. We get to decide, are we going to continue to beat ourselves up over this, or can I forgive myself?
That's right.
And the more that we start to forgive ourselves, now, not necessarily not taking responsibility for things, right? And maybe changing some behaviors, but the more that we're able to do that for ourselves, the more we start to be able to do that with others. And I think compassion works in a very similar way. The more that we can be compassionate with ourselves, we can be compassionate with others. Not necessarily saying that we let people walk all over us, or that we're not accountable for ourselves, or that other people shouldn't be held accountable for themselves. But we don't get caught up in this hanging on to the pain and wanting revenge, for example. Right? I know that's kind of an extreme, but it's a different, this forgiveness piece is a challenge sometimes. And it's, I would say, you've got your life mastery. That is a mastery kind of skill that actually allows us to stay in our hearts, keep our hearts open, care about ourselves, care about others, hold people responsible and accountable, but from a place of love.
Right. Yeah, I think, well, so for me personally, I found that I had the exact opposite experience, in the sense that I had a very, very difficult time learning to forgive myself. When it came time for that, I could say the words, I forgive me, but it felt fake. And I didn't really believe myself when I was doing that. And I remember being in a group, and I think this was a group of men and women. And one of the people in the group said to me, "David, could you forgive a tree?" I said, "What?" "Well, let's suppose you had a tree, a pear tree or an apricot tree or something like that, and your little dog goes out and gets all curious about the apricots on the ground, eats one of the apricots, swallows a pit, and dies because he can't process the pit properly. Could you forgive the tree?" And I mean, that question really got me. I thought, okay, first of all, I had all kinds of judgments. I said, I think that's a ridiculous statement. The tree was just being a tree, doing what trees do, producing all this beautiful fruit and so forth for us to enjoy. And the dog was just being a dog, doing what dogs do, getting curious and eating a pit. And this woman was just sitting there nodding at me. Do you hear what you're saying? And I said, oh, right. No forgiveness was necessary for the tree or the dog. I could forgive them both because there was really nothing there. She says, now, can you go back and look at yourself, and can you say, I was just doing what I did, being my natural self, and not letting yourself off the hook, but just owning it, and then forgive the action. Once I learned that lesson, I still didn't quite get it. It took me a while, I'll tell you. But I finally, over the course of time, began to realize, of course, we all just do the best we can in any given moment with the information and the resources that we have. Are we really to be held to such high standards by anybody else? So self-forgiveness became something that I start doing regularly. And now when I say, I forgive me, I believe it. But I will admit it took time. And the reason I'm sharing that story is because it might take time for other people as well. Anyway, we've reached the top of the hour. Sarah, I know you have to get going. You know what I would really love is if you would give us some of your, what's that, light language to close us out, because it's just such a beautiful way of finishing up.
Okay, let's see what they've got to share with us. Sin tormaka che est ea conte anche, ant tanaka te ishiamota okeana, verhante ena ke she e, taha an ai chi e, koeana, te arakoche, nint oi kanche amtarakate. Namaste.
Beautiful. So for anybody hearing that for the first time, it's not meant to speak to your brain. It's meant to speak to your heart. So just allow yourself, and your soul, yes. Just allow it to fit in. Gail, did you have any final words you want to share before I close out?
See you, folks.
Yeah, see you later.
Bye, Sarah. Yeah, I think what I want to share is that, life is a grand adventure. And when we're sort of approaching life from that perspective, I think some of these concepts that maybe seem a little foreign or challenging, like, it can be fun. Like, have some fun. We talk about some pretty heavy topics here. And I guess I want to say, like, remember to have fun. Have fun with it. Don't, yes, you want to be responsible. You want to be caring. You want to be loving. And you don't have to be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
And just
Beautiful.
have some
Thank
fun with reflecting and using hindsight and forgiving yourself and having gratitude and all of the topics that we talk about here.
Great. Thank you, Gail. Scott, what final words would you like to share today?
No, I really want to echo that. And I want to talk about joy and fun and still being that curious little kid, because you can solve so many of life's problems that you have right now just by being that curious little kid. And when life was simple, because we have a tendency to complicate it. So enjoy life as it is. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thanks to Gail and Scott and Sarah for being here as my amazing, beautiful co-hosts. And thank you to you for watching this program and for being here on the live set if you were here for that. I just want to remind you that the recordings of this and every other episode are on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. So feel free to pop over there and you can check out some of the other episodes. And meanwhile, I want to wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. And we'll be here again next month for another episode of Soul Empowerment. So bye-bye for now.